do it.
So Popper 5!
Popper 5!
Woo,
And
woo.
welcome back to my cello. Mr. Darcy's back from this massive restoration. Well, you can tell me when you hear it.
Yes.
I think it sounds incredible. Judith Blackwell, luthier up in Berwick-on-Tweed, did the work, so it's very
so happy for you.
I know.
That's great.
It's never been so resonant. I cannot believe. I don't know how much that will come across on here, but
I bet you will. That'd be awesome. Yeah, I love getting it back when it's all like, you know, it's just been cleaned and is like they put their magical juice on it. It sounds really gross, but yeah.
Well, yeah. This one was quite fun, I thought. You know, scherzando. It's always kind of fun. You know, obviously the big thing going through this is the dotted rhythm, and dotted rhythms are such an important thing, I think, to musicians, and not tripletizing the rhythm. It's so easy. So we'll just the rhythm that's the rhythm that goes throughout this whole study. I don't know why I picked a B.
It's so resonant. It's so resonant. Oh my god.
I know, right?
Already.
Listen to that.
I love it.
And the wolf is gone too. Anyway, but so that rhythm that happens throughout, I think, you know, there's a real reason Popper's put that there. And I thought, you know, we'll delve into this, I'm sure, but two things right off the bat with this dotted rhythm is we're always going to want to release the dotted quaver a little sooner, especially when the string crossings come in to facilitate the string crossings. And I think the real challenge of this study is how long can you make that first quaver and make a clean string crossing? Because it's really easy to play quaver and a semiquaver rest, isn't it? Like there, places like there. I just did with a rest.
I pretty much actually did the rest everywhere. I just like the whole like. Now what I am doing is just releasing the bow.
Yeah.
And then trying to go wherever it lands. And so you will hear certain areas like this where you can still hear the resonance of the note, but you are actually, I mean, that's not a place where it will work. Yeah.
I think that's exactly the point of the study is how do you release in order to get there in time while still making it sound like a dotted quaver as opposed to
Yes, I love it.
Which, you know, is all part of the bow technique. And then I think as well, the sprightliness of a scherzando movement when you have these string crossings, you know, and you know, it's a funny one because there are some technical challenges up here, but I actually thought, you know, I bet this study, when you play it back and listen to it, the parts that feel easier probably sound worse, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like all this, if you're not really, really clear with your string crossings, that can sound not very nice, very choppy. Anyway, what did you think, Ailbhe? Initial thoughts?
I totally agree with you. I think what's very interesting about the dotted rhythm is when I did have a technical challenge to the left hand, often my rhythm became slightly triplety because I was focusing on something else. So I find whenever there's something that it's not even anything particularly hard, but something I need to concentrate on tuning wise or string crossing wise, that sometimes I would get da 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 da, you know, just what are you doing? So very interesting to re-engage one's concentration of the rhythmic feature. I think when that comes to it. And then I was really fascinated by notes that jutted out. So quite often a lot of your open A strings, so let's say you had something like bar 27, so that A, the open A, they're just little areas where you actually have to give less juice in the bow. And rather than, you know, so little notes. A big example of this for me was in the very first four bars. This, so the top note, because you're going to an A string, and then here, this one, often that G sharp would suddenly jut out for me, light, so that it actually still sounds scherzando. To just watch where these unusual areas where the balance of your hand, you might be trying to focus on something or putting just too much weight on it, you know. So many fascinating, it just all over the place for me there, even the start of bar 7. So you've suddenly got back to your, but often there'll be just some kind of accent that you don't really musically want.
Yes.
Being that. So like 31, similar. So just always trying to think, you don't want it too beaty or you'll lose a long phrase, right? So any of those extra beats you can take out kind of in the way that you would with Bach, really.
Right.
The same thing, are you putting any
lines?
Yeah. Are you putting in accents that you don't like or you wouldn't musically do when you actually go back and listen to yourself? And what can you take out in order to elongate the phrase? So I found that fascinating.
Yeah, those great points. I mean, I think a lot of these very long hairpins that Popper puts in, like in bar 31 you're just talking about, are, you know, signaling that you really shouldn't be playing it beat by beat and you should be thinking more about the long phrase. I also wanted to add to your thing of those certain notes sticking out. That those were also like high potential squeaky moments for me. Because I think the thing is, when you're trying to achieve clarity, sometimes, you know, and it's difficult for the left hand too and stuff, that you have to be really careful of bow angle. Plus, we have so little time for that note to speak, it's really quite quick, so you have to be really accurate with your bow angle, so that you don't get a squeak. And,
definitely.
I found that a big challenge in this, actually.
I love when you say that about the bow angles. I think that feeds into what I was thinking about a good bit as well, is actually I need a lot more attention. But sometimes I can just get into this, my bow will do its own work and I don't have to think about it area of playing. But then when I really want clarity, I need a slightly firmer set of fourth and I suppose like third and fourth fingers in the bow, right?
Yeah.
So if we're still talking cello fingers, let's be specific. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got 3 and 4, and I found that controls the angle really, really well, and also gives me much more clarity. If we're breaking it down to if you were starting this for the first time, you really want a tiny bow for the semiquaver, right? So it's really this amount of bow that you're using. So we have to think about that feeling of I can't do that at the same time.
Beethoven 7.
What a great moment. But like, you know, when you get there, every cellist is like, I mean, it's I mean, what a legend. Fair play. But again, I love that. It just feels to me like it's a big down bow and up bow. And that often I think people kind of give too much bow to the interim notes.
Yeah.
And for this scherzando feel, we need less is more, right? Classic case.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you said the thing about the down bow to up bow, because it's something I've been talking about a lot with some of my students recently, just about the reflex of things, you know, and when you want to achieve a light stroke, especially, well, in lots of places you do this, but especially in there, you need to have this sense of reflex, like, and it isn't exactly reflex, isn't when you're doing up and down, but it's this feeling of action reaction, you know, there's a release.
It's tension release.
Yeah. Yes, and it's also sort of like naturally what the body wants to do. It feels good. And of course what you said is it's balancing that thing of finding that where it just feels good to do your bow and not really think about it, with the precision that's required to really get the notes to speak clearly and all of that.
Exactly.
And constantly balancing those two, I think.
Yeah, I love that, and it's also a matter of, so you've got your, and then so that's your big movement, and then the smaller movement, making sure da 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 is coming from the finger. So, and I noticed my first one wasn't good, and that was because I didn't have enough in my bow. It really needed to be da da, clarity with the left hand and the bow hand, exactly the same timing, lovely. When it's not, it's a disaster.
I'm sure it's not a disaster with you. Anytime you do
Well,
Ailbhe.
We shall
Well,
see.
this brings me into my next point, which is, I think, somewhat relevant, which is the accents, you know? And of course, Popper does that thing where they're slightly different in every place, and sometimes where you want them and sometimes not. So, you know, we have this first one at the end of the first line. So it's even there when I demonstrated, I really want to accent the top note, but you're not meant to. And then it's weird he only puts that one there. Then I think what's really interesting is when it comes back. Well, it doesn't come back. It's the first time this happens in 27. This whole section. It's only every other bar. Then you compare that to later on. You know, it's looking for these details. Where does that come back later on? And it's...
Yeah, I know what you mean. It comes in every beat then later on or something mad like that.
Yeah. And then
I think he's actually doing it for the musical line, funnily enough, because obviously we're down here. So he kind of he doesn't want people to go to even though normally we'd be like, go to the dissonance, so that it's all funky and cool, right? But here it's really more of a 2-bar segment of the overall phrase, right? So that makes sense, he's not doing it here. But then the second one, again, it's a 2-bar phrase but flipped on its head. So I think those ones definitely are musical reasons. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this really valid. I think so. I'm just trying to find the place where... Yeah, okay, this is a good example. 55. And this maybe was a mistake, but maybe it was intentional. So we have... So it's exactly the same as the first bar, but he puts the accent on the second beat. It's kind of one of those cheeky, like, piano moments, like, hey, you weren't expecting an accent there. And it's kind of random. But
it is random. I suppose when you get there, though, you probably do a... You probably do a total dim into the first beat. So maybe he's just being a joker.
Yeah, and I like the way you did that, because that was another thing I was going to ask you about is time in this, you know, because it is one I think you can play really straight through. But there are moments, for me personally, I would do what you did. You take time there.
Yeah.
And the question is if it's before the downbeat. I mean, I hadn't thought of that till you just did it, but yeah, you might take time into the first bar and then tempo on the second half of that beat.
Yeah, so you have to make a decision very clearly about what you're going to do. I think another place where it's really fun is the... You know.
Yeah. Woohoo! I know. It's such a hurrah moment.
I love it. I love it.
So left hand stuff, some of this thumb position thing, I wonder if we practice these in the same way. So I'm looking at, for example, bar 66. So I practiced all these in double stops where I would do the 6th, then the 3rd. And I also did the octaves, but did you have any other things to add to that?
That's pretty much exactly what I did as well. So I always like the connection. I actually didn't bother doing the octaves, but I want to know how I'm going to get from one to the other. So and then I'm shifting just the semitone so I know. And just a tiny bit of release as well, because your hand can get a bit cramped up there, so making sure just the left hand's doing it, not the bow. I cheated there. So there's actually an up and over, so that when you get there, sometimes that can be a bit crampy if you haven't actually decided to have a little bit of release, right?
Yeah, and it's one of those things, again, I think when you're used to playing some chromatic stuff, it's not easy, but it's somewhat manageable to be approximate. But, can't emphasize that enough. Like, the accuracy of that is only going to be really spot on and consistent if you're always finding release in that, because you just can't, like, you could probably power through maybe 2 bars of it, like,
Super.
Well, I bet after that Popper 27, probably could power through a little more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But for our average, cello strength and thumb.
I love it.
Yeah.
I am going to talk about my, favourite thing to talk about, back to my bow circles.
Oh,
and
yes, I knew you were going to talk about bow circles.
This is it's such a great place for it. So, I mean, all of it, it's just a brain melt, and you need to know where you're going, right? So, let's say we go clockwise, anti-clockwise, grand, wrong finger, so clockwise, still clockwise, still clockwise, this one, anti-clockwise. So it's really fascinating to go in the same direction the whole time. And really make sure that you're ready for that change.
Yeah.
Or classic other bar I thought was hilarious was 53. Anti-clockwise, still anti-clockwise. Now clockwise. Anti-clockwise, clockwise. So that's doing 2 different directions in each bar. So you've basically got about 3 notes. And if you don't work that out, I think that's an area where suddenly you'll be like, whoa, you good. Oh.
Yeah, it's like mere mortals like me who have not fully entered the world of bow circles. I'm just thinking as I listen to you talk, I'm like, I have to go and do like a residency with myself in the fall in that Steve Doan book. But that's seriously. The thing. You play these things that look, pretty inconspicuous. You're like, oh, that's fine. But you'll end up wasting all this time because you're like, why isn't it clean? I'll play it again slower, But it's a simple thing, and it's such an amazing tool to have in your way of approaching practice, isn't it? Because it's just another way to simplify what the problem is. So.
And it seems to, for me anyway, once I've worked it out, I mean, it's annoying trying to work it out because you're like, right, lift, it's just a brain melt trying to do it. But when you have it done, then you are literally never stuck. Like, it's never an issue. So that kind of like, clarity of string crossing issue just doesn't exist. So anytime you hear me playing without clarity, it's because I haven't done that kind of practice. And I should.
Well, brain melt is the right word for it. It's
yes.
And I suppose, like, if you're not used to doing the bow circles, it takes you a lot longer to figure it out. By the way, to anyone who has never tried this, who's listening, it's not as simple as it sounds. You're like, oh, right. It's really complicated. I mean, it's not really complicated. I'm sure it's like way different than down bow, up bow. Like, I kind of assumed when I first heard bow circles years ago that it was just, down bow. It was about bow direction, and it's not at all.
It's literally about the direction of the circle that this silver bit goes when you're string crossing. So you're going in an anti-clockwise clockwise circle, and every time that you go from a lower string on a down bow to an upper string on an up bow, you're always going to have that circle. So there's only 4 combinations you can ever have. So someday we should do an extra little bit on that, just for entertainment. It's really fun.
We should.
I'm such a nerd about it, and I'm sorry I keep harassing you about it in these videos as well.
No.
You know, it's just
It's so good. That's why,
it's good fun.
it's good to have each other, because we're like,
It
have
is
to include this
swapping power of the stories. I like it.
I know.
Anything else?
I
What about the
mean,
very
that's...
end?
Oh yes, the very end. Again, that's like squeak territory. For me, like risk of squeak is high risk area. And I was like, Katie, you have to actually release your fingers when you play those harmonics at the end.
Talk to me about that when you're like at the end of a piece, you just concentrate for the whole thing, and you're like, oh no, squeak. Like it's very hard to get yourself re-engaged concentration wise at that point. Well, I mean, for me, definitely don't smack out the third last bar open A. If you lighten that up, it already sounds much more scherzando and might give you a little more impetus to the end. I did find I had to practice. Just stop there. It's the only note. Do you play the last one as a harmonic, or do you finger it?
I do, yeah. I play it as a harmonic.
Interesting. I'm doing some hilarious versions of... But like, you can get really warbly up there as well, so it really has to be quite tight vibrato-wise.
Yeah.
But then, by the time you get to the end, like, everything's out, so you end up going... So, let's see what happens.
I think he was definitely channeling Beethoven 7 in this one. I'm just thinking there's so many
100%.
Moments. Just one more general point that I think is important. I don't know if you find this, and I was thinking, does this have in another repertoire? But I think that this particular dotted rhythm lends itself to easily slowing down. And maybe it's because of the string crossings as well. I don't know if it's the rhythm itself or just the nature of this study. But I thought you have to have this sense constantly of momentum going forward, because it's really easy to be... It's really easy to be in the beat.
I think you're right that the semiquaver, if the bow is too long in the semiquaver, that will often slow down the tempo. I definitely notice.
I think as well, it's tempting to sometimes wait on the last quaver. Like that.
Definitely.
There's a place where it happens. It's easy to wait on that last quaver and then slow down, but...
Yeah, definitely. Anywhere you can hang on, right?
Yeah.
Okay, will we give it a go, shall we?
Yes! Woohoo! Yay! Oh my god, last note was so awesome. That was great.
Thank you.
It was like that one. Remember in that one study where we had it was something like that note, and I like went for it. It was so baller. That was awesome.
Yay! Woohoo! Yay! Superb. That was lovely. Your dotted rhythm was just absolutely beautiful.
Oh well, thank you.
I mean, I have to applaud it because it was just so absolutely rhythmic and great. Fantastic.
Well, if there's one thing that's been banged into me, I mean, musical education, it's the dotted rhythm, because it's one of those things again, like orchestral play, like oh my god, the number of times, and it's everywhere, and it's really listened for, I think, in auditions and things, and when you come across a person who's maybe not been exposed to so much of the emphasis on that, it's it is quite I don't know, annoying or distracting if somebody's not really aware of those dotted rhythms at times, isn't it?
Yeah. And also, I suppose we never really talked about subdividing that. Really, you should be thinking ya da 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 da. I think I tried to do it while playing and failed miserably, but yeah. So that's worth actually kind of thinking about that all the time, so that you're never even slightly getting off the point.
We're all great too. It's a really fun one to listen to.
It is fun, isn't it? Well done, Popper. Fair play.
Yeah. Yes, well done, Popper, and well done you.
Thank you. Great fun. Love this one.
Yeah, I know. It was really fun. Woohoo. Go us.
Woohoo.
So
nice job.
I'll see you next time then.
See you next time.
Yay.
Bye.